My favorite playa gift, I've gotten some really wild things. My favorite, it was random playa gift, was a clothespin, a wooden clothespin. This guy, he painted it green, he put glitter on it, and he put two eyes, and it looks like an alligator. He was from Florida. And the reason that because the object is not the thing, the reason I love it was the look in his eyes when he gave it to me. Those two things together is what I remember, that humanity exchange. And that's to me what art should be. When money gets involved, it's not that that can't exist, that shouldn't exist, but we're ignoring this wonderful thing that Burning Man is giving us the window to. What could humanity be?
Meet the people who make Burning Man happen.
Around the world.
The dreamers and doers.
The artists, freaks, and fools.
Burning Man Live.
Hey everybody, it is Burning Man Live, somewhat live from the Black Rock Desert in northern Nevada for Burning Man 2025. I am your host, Stuart Mangrum. I'm here today with a super interesting cultural instigator, longtime member of the Burning Man community. He is an architect. He is a poet. He is, I'm very judicious about throwing around the term Renaissance man, but I think he kind of comes maybe close. And I think that's especially apt because we met talking about the Da Vinci's Workshop theme a few years back with our friend Larry Harvey. My guest is John Jennifer Marx. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm very happy to be here and just kind of see what things we can conjure up.
Yeah, this is great. Why don't we start at the beginning? I always like to start there. No, I don't always like to start there. Sometimes I like to start in the middle, work out to the ends, but...
and change it up when you can.
How did you get to Burning Man? What compelled you to go to Burning Man, and what compelled you to stay?
First, it was just a vague notion, right? Living in San Francisco, you hear about Burning Man. I bought a book on Burning Man, picture book. And my daughter looks at the book and she goes, "Dad, do you know what they do there?" And I said, "Make art." And she goes, "But do you know what else they do there?" And so we started talking about that. Now, she was 33 at the time. So we decide that we're going to go. So we try to get tickets. So this is back in like 2012. Hard to get tickets. So I'm hanging out with a friend of mine who you may know, Matt Cheney, Black Rock Solar, Black Rock Labs,
yeah.
Green Man, the whole thing. We're talking about, what are you doing this summer? And he said, "I'm going to Burning Man with my daughter." And I said, "My daughter and I have been trying to go for 2 years and we can never get tickets." And he goes, "You're coming with me." He's a solo guru. He's really good at what he does, but you never know what he's going to do. So until we actually got in the RV and were on the road, I wasn't even quite sure if we were going to actually get there and everything was going to work out. But we did. And we get in at 5 a.m. on the fringes of First Camp with all the stuff that goes on with Media Mecca and the Artery and the Knock. And it's quite a bit of an adventure. And there in 2015, which was our first year, Larry was still alive. All of the cultural founders, except for Danger Ranger, were in the camp. So it was a very interesting experience. We were only there for 4 days, but 4 days was enough to get the essence of what Burning Man was about, but not all of it. I mean, it takes time. It does. I don't think anybody gets the whole thing just like that.
Sometimes it takes 30 years.
Yeah. And, I had an interesting group. I had my first feeling about what it was and what the 11th principle was, which is a game we all play. A great game. So for me, I've been a lifelong artist and architect and, like you said, poet. And for me, the normal epiphany is you fall into this art world that you never knew existed and all the things that go with art. And so since that's been my background, I didn't have that epiphany, but the epiphany I had, which was delightful and very powerful to me, was seeing 70,000 people, let's say 95% of 70,000 people, being self-expressive in ways that I had no idea would really be possible. And that notion and how people changed in that environment was both fascinating and really heartfelt. Because you don't experience that. You could experience that, in little tiny groups and, different things with people. But to just have almost everybody you meet be in this state of mind was amazing.
So what did that make you want to do the next year at Burning Man?
The next year, Nikki, my wife didn't come with me the first time. She wanted to see what it was all about. She doesn't like dust. She doesn't like heat. She doesn't like
It's not for everyone.
camping. But she's come 8 times now. This is her 8th year. So I was so fascinated by what I thought the power of art and the power of culture could do, and to create this, not just the self-expression, but all of the things that go with it. So from a philosophical standpoint, the wheels just started turning in ways that I just didn't even think of before that. I'd heard of different things, read different things, but to see it live in the flesh. And then you look at the state of humanity and you say, what does humanity need? It needs a variety of things, but one of the things is it needs a Burning Man-like culture to break it free of the last 40,000 years of what we've been doing.
So did it inspire you to want to bring art out here?
Well, I was absorbing for the first couple of years. It was absorbing. But in 15, Matt didn't tell us what to do. So I was dressed like a tourist, basically, so I didn't know what to do. T-shirts, clever T-shirts, but nothing else. So then the second year, in 16, I brought some more creative outfits. In 17, I made 8 what I called visual poem-based art ponchos. So what I say is I'm a walking poem on the playa. So the idea is to have people look at it and go, what the hell is that? And then I explain it to them. I work them through a philosophy. In this case, it's Epiphany, which is actually the poncho.
You're wearing it
today.
Epiphany.
I'm wearing Epiphany today.
Okay.
By then, I'm thinking, I'm an architect, I design structures and I want them to have quirky philosophies and all this kind of stuff. But I'm not a builder. I draw it. I wave my hands. I just don't do the hammer and the nail. Now, fortunately, Burning Man's a community, so you don't have to do everything. Although on some projects that are small enough, you can do everything. But then in 2018, I meet a really interesting young man named Poindexter. When he learns I'm an architect, he gets all excited. He gets very interested because he's been twice, I think, and he's directly inspired. In fact, he's going to devote himself to art, and he specifically wants to build an art project at Burning Man. And he shows me his design. My intention was not to design something, not to get too involved, but to help him because, we became friends. So we start walking through it. And after about 3 hours, he says, well, I can see I'm maybe a little bit in over my head. Would you be the lead artist? I will take care of everything else. And so we forged that bond on a project called Andromeda Reimagined, which was a little 5-sided pyramid shade structure, 26 feet tall. And it was a female empowerment piece, but it was also a gender expression piece before anybody knew that I was twin gender. So that was a sneaky almost coming out in 2019.
Coming near.
Coming near. I like that. Coming near. But the first part was female empowerment. And we had a 17-year-old African-American Quaker girl who is the daughter of a very close friend of mine. She painted 4 paintings that went inside that told the story of Andromeda Reimagined. She painted that, and then I wrote a poem and put the poem in the back of it. That was the first art project. That was a team of about 30 people, and we had to raise only $30,000 to get it here. That then led to, I've kind of got the itch to do something else, but I don't have a focus for it. Just serendipity. The autumnal comes a few months later.
So it's the arts benefit that Burning Man.
The gala that they used to do.
It's pretty splendid.
Well, I think it's like a community event. It's more than a fundraiser. So at the autumnal, my wife, Nikki, made these necklaces, which are these little domes, glass domes as gifts, little necklaces, and inside was a tree. And so Eleanor Prager gave her one. Nikki had given away all of them by then. And Eleanor rushes over with Absinthia. And she says, Absinthia is just obsessed with these things. Are there any left? And I said, no, Nikki told me she gave away the last one. But I said, here. And I gave her the one I was wearing. Then she was like, you're so sweet. Let's talk. So we end up talking for like a half an hour. And so we find that we have a lot of common ground on a bunch of different things. So we exchange information. And a week later, and at this point, now we're snarking about things,
As old burners will do, yeah.
As old burners will do.
Cynthia have been a member of this community about as long as I have.
Oh, yeah.
A long time.
And she's done some admirable pranks over the years.
We'll keep her secrets.
Yeah, it's her secret to share if she wants to. She has the spirit, especially the old burner spirit of
Jackassery,
also compassion, and all the things that go with
sustainable jackassery.
Sustainable. Well, there's this whole issue about what was the original meaning of leave no trace.
Well, to begin with, it's leaving no trace. It is a process.
Okay,
a process,
no
not
trace.
a command.
Yes, I like that.
Just clean your shit up is what the original intent was.
Was it?
Yeah.
I thought it was don't get caught punking that billboard, leaving evidence behind.
Sure. I mean, okay. You want to invoke the Billboard Liberation Front.
No,
we were very scrupulous about leaving the job site clean. And we'd always leave a six-pack for the sign men who were going to have to
redo it. And generosity. Yeah.
One time we even left an extra power box because we didn't have enough power to run the neon for the Joe Camel board.
So you had to help them.
They ended up with substantial capital improvements to their board.
For years, I had always admired that work before I knew who was responsible for it. It was a San Francisco, and it was just like, yes! Once again, the force is stricken, and something really interesting and provocative has happened. I did have the occasion to ask John Law about that, and he said 50-50. 50-50 sustainable, 50-50, don't get caught. Don't get caught doing bad things. The thing about Burning Man is, with the 10 principles, one of the things that I found incredibly delightful was they're contradictory. And I believe,
complementary. There's
no, they're both.
There are tensions between them.
Yes,
to say that.
Creative tensions. I'm what I call a paradox embracer. So I think that we're very often confronted with a number of binaries, whether it's gender or whether it's rich versus poor, all these different things. And we tend as humans to make them two. Sometimes they're ternaries, sometimes they're quadranaries, or however one would pronounce that. They're complex. So two makes it a little bit easy. But the thing is, we try to navigate. In the West, I think we try to resolve paradox by picking A or B. I think it's very much more healthy to embrace paradox. And it's not the gray area between black and white. It's all the colors in the universe between black and white. And some of the sweet spots are not at the extremes of these kinds of binaries we concoct. What was beautiful is that it's not like the 10 Commandments, where it's like, thou shalt, which you corrected me because I, like Judeo-Christian background, like thou shalt. And as you said, it's a temptation to do something rather than a command.
Look, I was just driving past Center Camp and somebody did an installation there on the 10 principles where they turned them into commandments. I was so pissed off because they're just so intentionally not that. They are written in an active voice. They're written from the point of view of the individual and not from some outside power. They're practices.
Might run out of time.
They're not laws.
Yes, exactly.
And people try to enforce them as laws, and it just drives me crazy. Self-appointed police from the 10 principles.
Well, I like the creative tension. Cynthia and I are doing some of that. We're texting, we're on the phone, and she said, I just went to the No Spectators show at the Oakland Art Museum, and she sent me this picture, which says VIP entrance, including the red velvet ropes, and bypass the line. She's like, I am so outraged. And then she just went on about all the things that the museum shows. Now, the thing to remember for both of us when we were talking about this is we are very proud of the museum shows, but nothing's perfect. And Caveat did the great thing where he went into the gift shop at the Smithsonian.
Try to leave them a gift.
He left her a gift, I think. She didn't know what to do with it. But she had a learning moment. She had an epiphany, right? So that was quite wonderful.
Embrace the spirit of the gift.
Yeah.
Avoid false dichotomies.
Yes. We're snarking back and forth, back and forth. And Cynthia says she had just gone to the Oakland show. She had walked through it. You can't make art. You can't touch art. You can't do this. You can't do that.
Stand behind the line.
And, it's a wonderful thing that those things get out. I mean, the one at the Smithsonian broke records for attendance and all that kind of stuff, and it helps to get the culture out, but it's not the real experience. We're talking about all that stuff, and she says, we're going to make our own museum. So we start talking about what that would be. And I'm like, oh crap, now I've got to actually design a museum. The design of it evolved to 8 galleries, 2 big ones and 6 small ones. And the 2 in the front have always been the same. One is snark, and the other one is social justice. The other galleries, we don't curate. We just have suggestions of what people might do. Our goal was to be inclusive of all of the range of small art that was not appropriate for the temple. You don't want generally snark. You don't want politics at the temple. There's a bunch of things that you don't want at the temple that are sort of not in the spirit of or disrespectful. All that stuff could go into the Museum of No Spectators. I remember seeing a political statement and thinking, this just doesn't feel right for the temple.
Or it might extend beyond the temple. I mean, if it's divisive. If
it was very
does
divisive.
the opposite of what Burning Man is supposed to
Exactly.
do, which is to bring people together. So you built a museum and invited people to fill it up with their...
Fill it up with art.
Okay.
Yeah. You walked in the front. You walked in the gifting shop.
You entered through the gifting shop?
You entered through the
Okay,
gifting
cool.
shop. Yes, direct reference
Uh-huh.
to Banksy. Instead of leading through the gift shop, you're entering through the gifting shop, and we've changed the use of both words. So we've gone from gift, which is a noun, which means an object one could buy, to a verb. So we gave away 5,000 photographs from all sorts of different Burning Man photographers. We gave away probably 3,000 pieces of jewelry. We had Paul DeLauthor, who was part of the Gifting Guild and part of the Jewelry Guild. He was part of the gifting shop. We changed the use of the word from a noun to a verb.
As it is in the 10 Principles.
And as it should be in real life to a greater degree than it is. We also changed the use of the word shop to mean to make instead of to buy. So we had workshops in the gifting shop. Paul ran some of them. Lonnie ran some of them. We even had a woman come from South Africa and ran a workshop in the gifting shop. It was a beautiful adventure. One of the things about the gifting side was the first year on Friday, we ran out of gifts. So we had 5,000 photos. We had all this jewelry, we had all this stuff. We ran out of gifts. We didn't know what to do. Burners being burners, they'd come, they open the box, they'd see no gift, they'd leave one. So we actually never ran out of gifts. The museum always had gifts in it because burners would leave gifts for people when they realized what was up. And
As they will do.
As they will do. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this project still lives.
It still lives. It's in New Mexico in a place called Art City.
Mm-hmm.
We have an exhibit up inside the museum because there's the museum as the vessel, shiny and sparkly, and then there's the museum as an exhibit space. Lonnie and I, whose daughter was the one that painted the paintings in Andromeda Reimagined, Lonnie and I printed a bunch of art that came from the artists who were at Burning Man. So the 2 big galleries were retrospectives. One was a poetry gallery, poetry on a wall. Most of the time you either hear poetry read out loud or it's in a book. And my preference is always almost all poetry should be read aloud, because then you add your emotion, you add your humanity to that reading. And if you're reading somebody else's poetry, it's the same thing. You're adding your humanity to that experience. But you don't see it on the walls very often. So we had one gallery covered with poetry that was on Playa. And then the other one was pictures of people building it, people using it, the workshops, the gifting shop. And then we had 6 galleries of the artists that we could contact who had done things, and we had them give us new work to go in New Mexico. That spot is an amazing thing. I mean, just if people are traveling through New Mexico on the way to Texas.
Or the way out of Texas.
Or the way out of Texas, yes.
Yeah.
Maddie has got, I think, 18 pieces now of Burning Man art, including part of Paradisium, part of Finch's Lips. Lana did the Mind's Eye, that's there. The one that's there, which I'm very proud to be next to, is Facing the Fear Beast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's there.
Amazing piece.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's always great to see Burning Man art go out into the world.
Yeah.
And even a whole museum worth of Burning Man art going out into the world. I want to get a little theoretical here and talk about art and architecture. I mentioned the Da Vinci's Workshop theme earlier. And as I was researching that, I found that back in the Renaissance, art, architecture, and engineering were all peas in a pod.
Yes.
I mean, Da Vinci, he made most of his money doing like military fortifications.
Yes.
And over the years, they've split up in interesting ways, right?
Yes.
But it seems like there's still a pretty incredible tension between architecture and art, particularly over form and function. I mean, architecture today seems to be more favoring the engineering side of things than the artistic side of things, right?
Absolutely. And weirdly enough, I just have a new book called Second Century Modernism. If you look back at first century modernism, and this is in architecture, but I think it applies to fine arts as well, not to arts in general, because there's a big differentiation for me between fine arts and art, general art. And Burning Man taught me they're both incredibly valuable, and you should not value one over the other. In architecture school, and its ally with the fine arts, it's like, well, everybody wants to be a fine artist. Everybody wants to be an architect. Everything else doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But yet it really does. And that disconnect between art in general and the fine arts, or architecture and the public, is getting more and more deep as time goes on. In the book, I've got this little photo of a ballet program, weirdly enough. The ballet was called Animus Anima. So male-female energy. He talks in this narrative that he writes about the ballet, about paradoxes, about binary opposites. And he says, architecture and humanity. So an allied art is saying you have to choose between architecture and humanity. You would think those things would be together, right?
I mean, isn't architecture supposed to serve humanity? Isn't that
you would think so? But people wonder, do they have to choose between the two? Because modernism, as you said, had gone off the rails a bit and doesn't serve the people. We don't design from the heart anymore. We design like engineers. I love most all the engineers I know, but architecture used to be an art form during the beginnings of modernism. So for maybe the first 50 years, I think mid-century modernism was the peak, and that's an identifiable style that people still love.
Yeah.
Very clean, but it had a heart. You know, in LA, there's like Googie architecture.
Right.
It has a style to it. It makes you feel optimistic.
Frank Lloyd Wright.
Frank Lloyd Wright was really good at emotional meaning and emotional engagement.
Yeah.
And so is Googie. Now, the opposite of that would be Mies van der Rohe. Seagram's Tower, Crown Hall in Chicago, the Farnsworth House, which was the first glass house that humans ever built. He's the rationalist, the personification of the idea of the linear, logical, verbal thought process. Mm-hmm. The other side is multidimensional, intuitive, visual, creative process. You're designing from the heart and designing, like a robot. The weird thing is AI can design better than most architects if you want something designed from the heart.
Oh.
If you say, design me something in the style of Gaudi, it's really good at that. It can't think of the new thing that doesn't exist.
Right.
And so, in a sense, the quality of what you get out of AI is only as good as the library you ask it to draw from. Mm-hmm. If you ask it to draw from all of humanity, you're going to get all of the good and the bad. And so if you curate it, this, of course, is a double-edged sword, because if you say only use Disney-esque optimistic poets, you're going to get a world that we also don't want to live in, right? It does not know the difference. Now, maybe singularity, and maybe when we get to general intelligence or whatever the big step is, maybe it will know better. Caveat asked me to write a thing for the journal back on iRobot because everybody was writing about robots. And he said, I need somebody to write about humanity. And I came up with a phrase. This is all inspired by Burning Man. And this did go from Burning Man all the way to the World Architecture Festival. And this is a derivation of Descartes. So Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And I believe that Descartes only gave us half of the equation.
Feeling, perhaps?
Yes, exactly. So I, as a paradox embracer, I want to add to things. I think, therefore I am, I believe, carried an arrogance that thinking was the highest order of human achievement. So I want to add another line. I think, therefore I am. I care, therefore we are. And you cannot think your way to we. Economic transactional thinking will create a relationship, but it's based on transaction. And when one of the sides changes or fails to deliver, it's not caring. It's not true caring. You need to feel your way to we. You need to carry your way to we, which is what Burning Man does.
When I look at the architecture, the urban design, everything about this place, it seems to come from a place of we.
Yeah.
Because nobody can do this stuff alone.
Yes.
But it seems to also come from a place of radical. As you know, Larry used the word radical not to mean extreme, but from the heart.
Yeah.
And so I see a healthy balance between that idiosyncratic self-motivation and that collaborative element.
That balance, called creative tension, balance, paradox,
between radical
the
self-expression and
embracing
communal
of
effort.
that. And that's where you really get some rich humanity. Balance, I think, is the key to everything. But balance doesn't mean that you stay in the middle. You could imagine being on a snowboard. You have to stay balanced, but you're doing something extreme. So it doesn't mean that it's tepid. And then you have to be aware of balance and when things get out of balance. So in architecture, in the first century modernism, it's an architecture of abstraction and ideas. I have never met a modernist who has said, no, that's not what it is. They go, it's more than that, but that's pretty good. What if in the second century modernism, we add to that an architecture of emotional abundance? Now that I've been going on this thing about emotional abundance and caring, I've gotten incredible pushback from one group. And it's like, we absolutely need to do this from the other group. And it's interesting to see how these two groups interact. The first group tends to think, no, that's the death of culture because you're giving up reason. But reason by itself is not make a human being. The caring is far more important. But we lose sight of that because we think logic will explain everything for us.
Have you had a look at this year's temple yet?
No, we haven't been out.
It definitely has brutalist aspects.
It does.
It is very, very dissimilar from any temple we've had before.
Yeah.
You have the soaring path to the heavens of cathedral architecture.
Yes.
But if you go inside, it is much more human and literally down to earth. It is designed to mimic the desert landscape and sort of be like a large stone, but inside the stone is a cave.
Inside the stone is the heart
of a heart. The architect, Miguel Arias Garcia, is a really super interesting guy.
Yeah, I did go to a presentation at a tea at Burning Man headquarters.
Yeah.
And it was, like you say, it's very different than anything we've seen before. Minimalism in architecture is a big thing, and brutalism, they're interrelated. I want to see lovable architecture. I don't want to see everything to be lovable necessarily, but we need to add that in. With minimalism, the idea was you reduce it to the essence, reduce. So that reductive process, for me, every stage you're taking a bit of humanity out of it.
Right.
So you get to the end and there's just a logic, a very thin thing that's so emotionally non-engaging intentionally. You got to wonder, why people don't love it because you've taken the humanity out of it. So what's the balance of rigor and discipline? which architects love, but also humanity and caring and empathy and all these other things. Architects look at a building and say, there's a concept. Participatory architecture, when you're working with communities, those buildings tend to have that empathy in it because the community's involved. But a designer should be able to take that and create something that the community could never have dreamt of, but it's still their dream. It's their ability to craft form. So the thing is, with minimalism, it's so hard to do. I would say that 2% of the architects can design in minimalism poetically. So for me, poetic brutalism and poetic minimalism, which have emotional engagement, are worthy.
Mm-hmm.
But non-poetic minimalism, which is what most of the things you see built in the world, are soul-suckingly empty.
Mm-hmm.
And we hide behind this idea that, and it's an idea, that architecture somehow has a higher calling. I have a little phrase that goes, have we exhausted the conceit yet that the public simply needs to catch up?
Well, that actually can be applied to fine arts as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, my God.
Oh, absolutely. I was on the board of the San Francisco Art Institute, arguably the second, only 2 remaining independent fine arts schools in the Western Hemisphere. Both San Francisco Art Institute and PAFA, which is in Philadelphia, they were the bastions of free fine arts, avant-garde art. And I think that we sorely need that. We need those people, and Burning Man has both. Burning Man has people that want to change the world in significant ways and others that just want to show the heart and show the humanity. And that range is so important. I did a visual poem called Range of Cultural Inclusion. On the one side is a professionally trained ballerina in a bubble. And then on the other side is Tinkerbell dancing. So you've got 2 dancers on the extreme. And in between is a graphic that shows a bell curve, which all these people of different colors and persuasions dancing, because almost everybody can dance, even if it's just moving to the music. To illustrate this concept of range of cultural inclusion. I live in that bubble. I love that bubble in architecture. I don't necessarily want it to go away. I don't want the bubble to be so hard. And I want the bubble to recognize that all of humanity that's to the other side of that bubble is equally important. And the thing for me I love about Playa was that on Playa, you have a piece of art. And that piece of art might be museum grade. And on the other end, there's a sparkly unicorn doll that's been bedazzled for your enjoyment. And on one level on the Playa, those are equally beloved because they're both a gift. And if you dismiss that gift, you're not dismissing the thing. You're dismissing the humanity of the person that gave it to you. My working definition of art, which includes fine arts, is art is the act of sharing your humanity through an expressive medium. So when we hug, we're sharing our humanity, but when we do it through an expressive medium, that to me is the essence of art. And even Jeff Koons shares his humanity. You might then ponder what his humanity is. An ex-commodities broker who saw the fine arts world as an unregulated commodities market and said, I can punk this. And he did. And he sells pink balloon dogs for $20 million.
It is hard not to see the fine art market as a scarcity-driven bubble.
Yes, exactly.
The commodification, I think, has gotten toxic in that market.
It's very toxic. I have a term for that called investment-grade art. I don't think any artist starts out. Imagine you've got a niece, named Julie, and the niece comes up and says, Uncle Stuart, I know what I want to be. And she's like 7 years old. And she says, I want to be an artist. She talks for like an hour, right? And you're just so excited for her. And afterwards, you're saying, Julie, this is going to be great. People are going to love you. You're going to make a lot of money. You're going to be the best factory worker for the wealthy. And she goes, no, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I want to be. And you say, no, don't worry about it. You'll be famous. You'll be rich. It'll be great. But no artist starts their journey wanting to be a factory worker for the wealthy or working a commodities market, right?
Except
And-
Warhol, who actually did want to be a factory owner.
Yes. Well, there are exceptions, delightful exceptions.
Dalí,
Oh God,
both embraced
Dalí, yes.
the dollars.
In the end,
Yeah.
he did. Yeah, he went full commodification. But the thing is, that bubble in the fine arts is so hard.
Yeah.
Because there's money involved. So what happens is they go, if you're not really a credentialed poet or painter or sculptor,
Mhm.
you're kind of the casual, the amateur, you should just stay in your box. We're the worthy ones. And there's a pejorative against being an artist. We got this great playa gift, which was just words, like refrigerator magnets. And one of the combinations was bad art, please. And that's on my wall because you need bad, quote unquote, art. But if that art comes from the heart, now the beauty for me with the range of cultural inclusion is on one level, everything's beloved. At the same time, I think many, many people at Burning Man can also navigate the idea that there are qualitative differences between the two. They can embrace the dynamic of both things happening, that museum quality work of art has got maybe more rigor, more discipline, more training, more sophistication. It's different than the other thing, but you can love them all and you can gain something from them all. And you can approach them as like, do I need to see the guy's resume to see whether or not this art is good enough?
Or read some reviews.
Or recent reviews, or what did they sell it for? But the hard part is to make a living as an artist, you need to sell things for more to pay your rent. So we have to work out a value system that helps sustain people that are in the arts, even if it's casual art making. Everybody making art could be healthier. And weirdly enough, sports makes this work for themselves. So you imagine the person that plays soccer on the weekend. They love soccer. They love to play it with their friends, however they like to compete, whether it's really vicious or they just love playing the game. They don't think that they're pathetically third rate because somebody's making $10 million doing the same thing they're doing, but they're doing it at a different level, right? They don't think that. It's not a negative. You don't see yourself as unworthy in sports. There's a healthy relationship between professional sports and casual sports.
Right.
For me, Burning Man shows you that there is a powerful reason to be an artist.
And opportunity.
And encouragement and help.
You said before, if your niece came to you and said you wanted to be an artist, very recently, the answer would have been, no, honey, you'll never make any money. Get a real job.
Get a real job.
I meet so many people out here whose creative impulses were basically stymied their whole lives by the market, by their family, by their peers. The idea that you can't be an artist unless you're making money off of it, right?
And that's why I became an architect. Because when I was 7, I wanted to be a painter. I wanted to be a poet. And in the Midwest, it was like, no, that's a hobby. You need a real job. Exactly what you said.
People come out here and talk about the transformative experience all the time as if
Yeah.
there were one. One consistent trend that I see is people come out here and say, well, maybe they were wrong. Maybe I can get the trumpet out of the attic and start playing it again, or pick up that half-finished novel, or maybe I can make art, or maybe I can learn how to make art, which I think is the other astounding thing about Burning Man's alternative art ecosystem, is that it has spawned all of these maker spaces and academies that have taken the place of the expensive art school education with hands-on learning.
And those to me are like when communities build soccer fields, right? Mm-hmm. They invest in that because they see a value. I think they should invest in art, in maker spaces and things like that. Because the outcome, imagine if this was a sporting event, the outcome, the psychology, the humanity that was here would be completely different. We all have our version of what Burning Man means. My version is...
What's yours, John?
Yeah, my version is Burning Man exists to encourage you to embrace community and kindness through participatory art. And participatory sports is not going to get you community and kindness. Likely. Nothing against sports, but the outcome of sports events that I know is not what happens here.
I can embrace your definition. I would just widen out art to creative expression.
That's a good one.
Different ways to do it.
There's different ways to do it.
Art carries a lot of payload with it, right?
Yeah, it's a little trigger word.
What is art? Right?
Am I good enough?
That's not art.
Yeah.
I love also that people here have developed whole new genres or genre-defying art that cuts across boundaries and doesn't fit into any of the, as we used to say, any of the bins in the record store. It's just out there.
Yeah. Well, because self-expression, radical self-expression, is so important. To me, it was that epiphany, on Playa that first time, 70,000 people being self-expressive and seeing the range of things that you got and being excited about the whole range. I mean, my favorite Playa gift was a clothespin, a wooden clothespin. I've gotten some really wild things hanging out with Lady B. You can get some really beautiful necklaces.
The jewelry making is out of sight.
Amazing. It was a random Playa gift. It was a wooden clothespin. This guy, he painted it green. He put glitter on it and he put 2 eyes and it looks like an alligator. He was from Florida. And the reason because the object is not the thing, the reason I love it was the look in his eyes when he gave it to me. Those two things together is what I remember, that humanity exchange. And that's to me what art should be. When money gets involved, it's not that can't exist, that shouldn't exist, but we're ignoring this wonderful thing that Burning Man is giving us the window to. What could humanity be?
What's next for you, John? What are you looking forward to? I always like to think that next year was better.
So there is a Burning Man architectural professional thing that I'm doing. I did a workshop on creative communities. Creative community, you imagine a developer is building something, let's say at the scale of 10,000 people. So a developer is building something and they might put a plaza in. Maybe they think it's valuable. Maybe the city made them put the plaza in. Mm-hmm. And maybe they plunk a piece of art in there and they put a little bandstand. So what do? They buy a piece of art from somebody from somewhere, depending on what their budget is. And if they have a theme, God forbid, Burnerville, they buy a piece of Burning Man art, they put it in there. They say, this is a creative community because they bought a piece of Burning Man art or they bought a piece of art. That goes against the whole concept of what a creative community would be, what a Burning Man community would be, Burning Man-esque. And then the bandstand, whatever the developer thinks that people like smooth jazz, which I like, but not everybody likes that. It's very dated. And they bring somebody in to play music, right? So a creative community, that piece of art and the numerous pieces of arts that are around there should all be made by members of the community. And the music, whether it's good or bad or that whole range, should be people playing music for each other. And so it's not just putting maker spaces in, but creating a social programming that gets people to value doing it for each other. And if they want to go somewhere else, they want to go to a concert hall, they want to go to hear people at the highest level, that's great, but they're still participating. And I believe, just like the soccer person, I believe that if you are playing an instrument, and even if on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 3, but you love it, you're going to love the people that play better than you even more if it feels open, if it feels like there's a range of inclusion, that you are similar to that person, that you are participating in a thing that's of joy or benefit. And Burning Man shows you can just do that.
Whatever's in your heart.
Whatever's in your heart. Yeah.
Well, thank you, John, Jennifer Marx, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
It's been a great experience as always. Anytime we've talked, this is fun.
Let's go out there and change the world, man.
Yay.
Yay. Thank you.
Burning Man Live.
This has been another episode of Burning Man Live at Burning Man's Black Rock City. This has been a labor of love from the Philosophical Center, one of the 6 program areas of the nonprofit Burning Man Project. Thank you to the Burning Man webcast and everyone at BMIR. If you want to thank them directly, email us at live@burningman.org. If you want to thank them indirectly, stuff a buck into the tip jar at donate.burningman.org. Thanks also to our team, from DJ Toil to Kbot to Lotus, and many more. I'm Michael Vav, and thanks, Larry.
Actually, I don't think I said anything I'd get in trouble for. If you would have said, well, tell me about the mafia and the royal court.